Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Eggert. Today's guest is the Chief Growth Officer at Keystone Group International. Now, that word growth means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and we're going to understand how her journey has influenced the work that she brings to her clients. Let's get after it with my friend, Jen Lindahl. Jen, hey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aaron. Super pumped to be here on this delightful snowy Friday morning we have.
I hope people can't hear the wind. So we're recording on a Friday that I swear, like out on the farm here, the wind is barreling through here. So our fancy microphones are hopefully keeping all that out of there.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's before I get going here, I want to address your pronouns so I know how to refer to you throughout our conversation. So could you please share those with me now?
She, her.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm so excited to share your story because there's some things I want to talk about in your journey, more on like the middle of your journey that I think are going to be really fascinating around, and it all is around athletics and golf. So that just is going to be fun. But so you are born and raised in Hudson.
Yes.
So are you a true Scotty or are you a Minnesota Scotty?
True Scotty, Packer Badger gal.
All right.
All the way.
I got to ask because sometimes those border cities, you never know.
It's a split here for sure.
Yeah, I have a friend that lives in Prescott and she loves Minnesota stuff. So we just want to make sure and get that out of the way.
Well, my mom grew up in Superior, Wisconsin, and they only got Minnesota TV. So she grew up a Viking until she met my dad, and then she was a Packer, and so now I'm a Packer.
Yeah, that's the way it works. All right, good. Aaron Rodgers won the MVP last night. So those of us that are Packer fans, that's a good feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's dig in. So talk to me about your family dynamic. What's your siblings and stuff like that?
Yeah. So mom and dad together for 37 years, very long time. Bad that I can't remember, but just me and then a brother who is 2 years younger than me. And interestingly, even after everything we'll talk about my journey where it took me, we all live within a 10-mile radius of each other now. So super close, tight-knit family. Very grateful for that.
Yeah. I always like to talk about like the nature versus nurture thing. And so when people get into leadership and entrepreneurship and things like that, did your parents have an influence on your path? Or do you think you're just wired that way?
Combination for sure. I mean, I think you're born obviously who you are, but my dad actually, he had a non-traditional career path. He didn't go to college actually until I was in middle school. So watching him kind of go through what he went through and all the work that he did and just like his work ethic, I think definitely resonated with me as I was growing up, kind of watching that. So definitely like that from a, I guess, nurture perspective, right?
Yeah.
My mom was a teacher for like 37 years, complete saint. I could never do that. So I'm super grateful that people, choose that path because I watched her go to her class for 5 minutes and I'm like, I don't know how you last a whole day in here.
At what level did she teach?
Second grade, first grade for a really long time. And then she ended her career in second grade. And actually she still subs like 2 or 3 days a week. She just loves it. So
yeah, I think that's such a fascinating time, right? Like, I think I would much rather teach first, second, third graders than teach high school in a heartbeat. That's just me. But I think she has such an impact on shaping lives, and because it's such a big part of, that 5, 6, 7, 8, age range is so big on how they're going to turn out when they get to be high schoolers.
Yeah. And interestingly, I mean, she was my parents were relatively strict growing up. And it was like a joke once I got to middle school and all the kids who had been in her class, like, oh, your mom's the mean teacher, Mrs. Schutz. And I'm like, you should see her at home kind of thing, trying to like beat it off. But then like later in life, they appreciated that about her. And I appreciate that about her too, because I think because of that upbringing, like that's brought a lot into the way that I'm wired and the way that I interact with myself and my family and my coworkers and just all of those things. So, yeah, It's interesting actually to look back and think about it that way.
Yeah, well, that's part of why we have this conversation, right? Is sometimes you'll listen back on this podcast and it's like, yeah, I guess I did have a pretty interesting journey. Um, were you a good kid, or did you rebel a little bit and then you needed to be put in your place?
Good, healthy combination of both, actually.
Good.
I got in trouble for drinking sophomore year at prom. Like we stayed over at, the parents' house who were having the party, and like my parents knew that was happening the whole time. And we got the "we're not mad, we're disappointed" conversation out of the way the next day, and nothing like terrible, right?
Right.
All things I feel like you have to go through as a kid.
Yeah, for sure. So as you progressed into high school, what was your jam? Were you into sports? Were you into debate? Were you into what was kind of your thing?
Yeah, so I tried every sport pretty much growing up. Soccer, basketball. I played basketball till like 10th grade. Golf was my jam. I actually like excelled at playing the flute in band in middle school. Interestingly, I was like first chair in the band. So my mom was like, "You are playing in high school." And I lasted all of one day. I went to band and I was like, "I'm not doing the band thing." So
couldn't do it.
Pretty much just golf. I was super involved in DECA. Ran the company store or the school store or some of those things.
Yeah, that's cool. So why, let's dig into this flute thing. Why was it one day? So you played when you were in middle school and then you got to high school and just were like, no, or what was going through your head?
I think the connotation of like band and like I wanted to rebel against my parents, I feel like.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I stuck it out for my sophomore year, and I'll tell you, I was the exact opposite of you. So I played the trumpet, and I was the absolute worst. And me and this other dude, Scott Henches, Scott, if you're listening, shout out to you, brother. We would fight for last chair, and I went every day too. I was just not musically inclined when playing that thing.
I feel like not that flute was really like super easy, but like trumpet sounds super hard. I've never actually tried it, and I don't
know. I was terrible at it. Do you feel like are you musically inclined still now? Or you like, if you're really good at flute, then you must have something in you.
I mean, I sing in the car, and I could probably play like a very basic song on the piano. That's about it.
All right. So you did you play the piano too when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what started me into kind of the whole band thing. I haven't touched a piano in probably 10 years now.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. Interesting.
Do people still play the piano? I'm like,
oh yeah.
I actually, it kind of makes me sad that I don't play the piano anymore.
Yeah. I think one of our guests on the show, Matt Beecher, he's super good at piano and he does it to this day. And I think I don't hear enough people say that they play the piano, to your point. Yeah. We need to get, and I think, there's so many other instruments out there that I think probably people play the piano, but then they also play something else that maybe they want to talk about more. Yeah. Well, what's your brother do?
He's in sales. So he took a like Smile and Dial sales job right out of college with no benefits, 100% commission. My parents and I looked at him like he was crazy. And now he's been at that company. He'll be 34 and he's at the same company. So he's been on a crazy ride. It's they sell soup to nuts solutions for resorts and like into the leisure space.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's killing it.
Yeah. Didn't you do that for a little while?
Yeah. So that was my move home job. When I came home, I did Smile and Dial sales at his company for a year. And it was the most humbling experience of my entire life.
All right. Let's talk about that in a second. So where'd you go end up getting your undergrad?
Oh, St. Cloud State.
Oh, Harvard of the North. Yep.
Yeah.
Good
if
for
that's
you.
What you want to call it.
I'm not going to talk about this. So I'm going to talk about your college experience during your 9 questions. I just cued you in a little bit. So, did you keep golf going through college? Like, did you play golf in college? Or did that kind of just become a hobby?
Yeah. So my dad pushed me to walk on the golf team. So they were D2 and I dragged my feet for a little while and ended up going for it. So I walked on the team at St. Cloud, actually blew up my shoulder 2 weeks before freshman season started. rehabbed for like 4 weeks, played in 2 events, had to withdraw in the second one, and had shoulder surgery in January. So it's kind of a drag. I was playing the best golf of my life, and that's actually changed kind of my whole mindset on golf in general. I really enjoy it now. The competitive kind of piece in me is actually gone, which I think is a good thing because I actually enjoy doing it now.
Yeah, good.
But that led to the start of my career. So I got connected with the Callaway Golf rep through all of that and started doing demo days. And that was kind of my foot in the door into the golf industry, which then led to kind of my path post college.
What was your best handicap of your life?
Oh gosh, I probably was down to, I wasn't the best golfer. I probably was like a 6 or 7.
Yeah, that's solid.
I was just steady Eddie. Like I was never like up and down. I was just kind of the steady Eddie of the team.
Yeah. Are you a member at any courses or anything now, or do you just kind of play around?
My husband and I are at Stone Ridge over in Woodbury. Luckily for us, we both love golf. So that's what we do in the summer. Those are our date nights. Our vacations revolve around golf. Our daughter, who will be 2 in a week, already has plastic golf club. So, it's actually really great because I look around and none of my girlfriends, I have a handful that will come play, but not many. So I feel really lucky that we kind of have that common interest.
Yeah. Every couple kind of needs to have their thing. That's awesome that's yours.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your time at Callaway. So I being a golf fan, and I heard that, and I just think that that's fascinating. So what kind of stuff did you do when you went, and after you were doing demo days and stuff, you actually you traveled? Where'd you go and what'd you do?
Yeah. So when I first got connected with them, I was like 18, 19. They flew me out to San Diego to their headquarters for training. And that's when I decided I wanted to work for Callaway. And so I signed a lease over fax when I was in my senior year, flew out there for spring break, had made some connections, met with a bunch of people at corporate, kind of teed up that I was interested in all of those things. And I had a job interview scheduled, but no job when I moved. So I literally graduated on like a Saturday, moved home. My dad and I packed up the car. We drove out there. I had like a blow up mattress, no furniture, the whole thing. That was back in 2008. So I interviewed for 4 weeks. I mean, as you can imagine, there was so many applicants for these jobs because everyone was out of work.
Right.
Didn't get the job. So in the meantime, I had applied for every single job under the sun, but all the kids had come home from college. So I got a job waitressing at Applebee's, which would not have paid the bills. So I get the call and I'm like, holy cow, I'm going to have to move home. Like, I can't afford to live here. Right. 2 days later, I got the call that they were hiring another position. And so I got hired, everything worked out. I started in customer service, did that for like a year, filled in actually for a gal who went on maternity leave in the marketing department. And then kind of over the course of 6 months, built a new role as, call it a marketing coordinator. It really turned into like an assistant brand manager. So I started on the woods and golf ball product lines, anything from working with R&D to finalize the product, working with the agency on all the branding and marketing and in-store and all the sales collateral, shot video commercials with Phil Mickelson. I mean, it was a pretty epic time of my life. I mean, traveled around to events, went to the PGA show in Orlando. So I was like 22 to call it 27 while this was happening. I mean, I felt like I was living in a dream.
Yeah, that's a pretty like formidable time of your growth as a professional, right? Were there any, you make it sound like pretty sexy and pretty cool to go work in golf, right, at Callaway. Were there any hard lessons that you learned in that time frame that helped shape who you are?
Yeah, I worked for a leader, Paul English, when I moved into that role, and he was like, go figure it out. Like, gave me the permission to go figure things out. And I think that taught me that I have to just learn and fail and figure it out to better myself. And I still use that mentality today. I really believe, as hard as it is, I have to remind myself to fail forward and progress over perfection and all of those things. But I think because of the experience I had there, that kind of forged the path for me to really do that through the rest of my career and still
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Do you, so how long did you spend at Callaway again?
It was about 5 years, 4 or 5 years. I was sitting in a meeting actually with the PGA Tour. We were talking about where we were going to spend our advertising budget the next year. I was working on the Odyssey brand at that time, and they were bringing all of their digital in-house from their agency out of New York. And I didn't really get a dabble in the digital stuff at Callaway. They had a whole separate PR social media team. So I called the guy after and I'm like, can you tell me more about what's happening? And literally, I think within 4 weeks, I had flown there, interviewed, took the job, gave my notice, sold all my stuff, packed my car, and then my mom and I took a road trip and I moved to Jacksonville, Florida.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That like, that's you, like, holy smokes, twice. That's you jump from one warm climate back home and then to another warm climate. Like, that is insane.
Yeah. I mean, I got to Florida and I was like, whoa. Like I moved there in July. It was hot as heck, humid, critters, rain.
Yeah.
I mean, I went from 75 and sunny, no humidity, perfect weather year round to that. And then I was like, what did I just do?
Yeah.
The job was great. It's an interesting collection of people in Jacksonville. There's like a bunch of rich, retired old people, a whole bunch of college, like party kids, and then like rednecks. And I was kind of in this like tweener state of like, I don't really know. Like I would find myself golfing with a bunch of old guys on the Saturday morning because I was like, I didn't really fit in anywhere. And
Right.
I had a lot of great coworkers, right? But you don't want to spend your entire life with the people you work with.
Right.
So I came home at Christmas that year, and that's when I went into my brother's work and ended up chatting with them, and they were growing. And so I took that job. I worked remotely for 2 months, had a trip planned to Puerto Rico with my girlfriend. We were going to the golf tournament over there. So I stayed through then and then packed up and moved her home and literally into my parents' basement.
Yeah. Right. That's a humbling experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Told myself I was going to last 6 months to save money. And after about a month, I was like, I got to get out of here. So I got an apartment and yeah, that's kind of how I ended up back home.
So you went from the PGA Tour in sweaty Jacksonville to back home here, and then is that when you went and you were doing your Smile and Dial gig?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was literally calling into a territory like 100 calls a day, trying to set meetings and then like pitch people over the phone that they should buy. I mean, selling digital advertising is essentially like selling air because you're just selling a spot on a website, right? Yeah, I have never tried so hard to fail at something in my entire life.
Really? Yeah. I think you learn a lot about yourself in those situations because you can either do it or you can't. And it's really hard in sales to be told no all the time. And that's right. Like you learn a lot about yourself. Was that part of the process? Like you just learned that this just isn't, your title now is Chief Growth Officer. So, there's obviously a revenue component to that, but also I think growth of clients. So we're going to get into that stuff, but I think sales has evolved from being able to do some of those things to what you do now.
Yeah. And I've been told so many times, like, you're so good at sales, but I don't really consider it what I associate sales with, right? So like I'm not shoving tchotchkes down people's throats or solution. Like I feel like I'm providing information, uncovering pain points and opportunities and helping people move forward. And interestingly, after that, I got into staffing on accident because I was going to get back into marketing. And so I got connected with Antenna and they were growing like crazy. And so they hired me on the internal team. And that's kind of where I learned a lot more about the consultative sales approach, which is what I really enjoy. And to me, it's a long-term vision and play. It's not a quick hit, like smash and grab sale that fills me up. And so that's kind of, I guess, led me to where I am now.
So you were at Antenna for a few years. What was your biggest, so going from all of the things that you did going to, and I know the people over at Antenna, they're pros, right? And so what was your biggest aha moment of getting into doing all these other jobs into going into this more like consultative professional process?
It was super exciting times there. So during my time there, we doubled in revenue. So we went from like 5 to 10 million in revenue. We had like 100 consultants. And when I started there, we had 30, and most of them were at 3M. And so I was really involved in helping lay the framework to grow. And I saw all sides of the business through the 4.5-ish years that I was there. I started as like a talent coordinator, helping with processes and talent pipeline and all of those things, and then kind of moved my way into account management and then truly into business development, which is where then I was opening up doors and really finding new clients to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. You, so you spent a while there, and then I know you had a couple other positions. And then there's a common tone that always kind of happens in these podcasts where people go through I'm going to call it a paradigm shifting event, in a lot of different ways, but you kind of, and what's really fascinating is that sometimes it's about bringing another life into this world. And you kind of had, that was part of your process, was that you had your daughter, and it just kind of had you hit the brakes a little bit from being a hard charger. Talk about like what was going on in your brain and how you decided you wanted to approach that.
Yeah. So I got out of staffing after Antenna for about a year. I went to work with a really good friend of mine, Nick, who owns a construction company, and we restructured his org. And through the course of that, I worked myself out of a job. And so I got back into staffing, which is where I thought I belonged. And it was just myself and another guy, and we were grinding it out, selling Salesforce staffing and consulting. And I had my daughter when I was working with him, and 4 weeks in, I looked at my husband and I'm like, I don't want to do staffing anymore. Like I have now validated that. Right. So I quit my job when she was 4 weeks old, and didn't necessarily have a great plan in place, but I knew I didn't want to go back and do that. And it's interesting that this little life can like bring that perspective. And to your point, like help me slow down and actually like figure it out. Although I didn't necessarily figure it out in my next couple hops. I came out of maternity leave selling signage, interior and exterior signage, and environmental branding, which is where I interestingly got connected with Keystone Group. So we hired them to help implement a strategic business plan, and we were not able to make the progress that we wanted. The leadership and ownership of the company was saying one thing, but their actions weren't aligning with that. And I am a fast-paced, like results-oriented person. So the pace was not aligned with where I was at and what I was promised. So I went to work for a technology consulting company and kind of stayed in touch with Keystone. And at the time I was like, I don't want to change jobs again. But if I look back, I never really like got my resume. There was a couple times in my life where I got my resume and went out and sought out a job, but like my path was forged for me and came to me, and I just followed my gut, which high risk, high reward, right? Like it's scary to change and it's not ideal. And one of the lessons I learned along the way from one of my mentors, she's like, who cares what your piece of paper looks like? She's like, do what you want to do and what fills you up, because you get one life and you're not even guaranteed the next day. So like, if you don't like what you're doing, then fix it. Right. Somebody 2 weeks ago was like, you're not a tree. Like, if you're not happy, move. Like, and so all of those things resonated with me. And if I think back now, like sitting at Keystone, what we do for our clients, if I would not have had the perspective that I have by going through the jungle gym that literally is my background, I would not be able to provide the value and perspective that I'm able to bring to our clients now. Yeah,
I think that's an interesting perspective, right? Like you may have had a little, a few more stops along the way than you would have liked, but actually that is a good thing, because what you do now informs that so much. And so, I've had Jamie, the CEO, Jamie Tate's the CEO on this podcast, Chelsea, who's also a facility, and they're both members of Coalition 9. You're a member of Coalition 9. And so I've got, I look at this powerhouse of ladies that you guys all have there. And it was, when I found out you were going there, I'm like, oh shit, like this is getting out of control. So, so I want to talk, so this is a big part of so I said that kind of in the opening, like the word growth means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So talk about your role at Keystone, what you're doing now. And then I want to remind people of what you guys are doing and what the future holds for Keystone as well.
Yeah. So when I connected with Keystone a couple years back, it was just Jamie, and then she had brought on Chelsea like shortly before then. So Jamie kind of trudged the path. She started the company like 8 years ago, hired Chelsea 2 years ago, and they've kind of just been out selling and delivering stuff, right? Growing this thing to the point where it was like, okay, we have something here. Now let's continue to scale. And so they brought on Rana in the Sioux Falls market to open up that market in November. And then I joined officially kind of right after the first of the year. And so we're kind of going through, I'm kind of taking the approach that we take with our clients, honestly, with where we're at. Like, what are we doing? How are we doing it? Kind of that whole streamline and focus process that we go through with our clients, which I think is great for me from just a learning and onboarding standpoint. It brings its own challenges, obviously, but really, our verticals are strategy, leadership, and culture. And the beauty of our culture model is that we're kind of taking this nebulous ball of goo that is culture and putting constructive things around it so that we can tell companies how to move the needle forward. So we have a whole bunch of defined elements that ladder up to culture that we can say, okay, here's where you're falling short, and here's how we can get you better in those areas. And that all ties into their overall business strategy. Leaders drive all of that, as much as some of them might not think they have the impact that they do. I mean, they are the root of it all, right? And so the impact that we're able to make with our clients across those three verticals is just incredible. And the amount of energy that I get from it is super exciting. So I feel really lucky to be where I'm at. I mean, this team of women is incredible. We just went on our annual planning retreat in Sedona, and we left as a team and came home as a family. I mean, the stuff we talked about, companies need to do that. Like teams, we made more progress than most companies probably make in 5 years. And the openness and transparency and trust, right? That's what we talk about. The foundation, it's the foundation of everything. And so we're lucky enough to have laid that in the beginning as we kind of continue up the mountain that we're climbing right now to scale growth.
So if you look at that, let's dig into that offsite that you guys did. And I don't want to talk about specifics, obviously, but so if you say like you made such great progress in one long weekend that some companies make in 5 years, how could someone take an approach to, let's say, a 4-day, how did you guys structure this that was so successful?
I think the first element is just getting out of your element, right? Like going somewhere else. We followed a similar structure to our 2-day annual planning sessions that we do with our clients, but it's usually in a conference room, in the office. People's mindset is the same it is every day. So I think there's something to be said about like literally moving yourself to a new environment and opening up new brain space. I mean, that was the biggest factor.
I remember reading years ago, and I kind of read it every once in a while, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And when they do their offsite, right, like they would do their meetings in the office and they didn't have nearly the impact. And then they did the offsite, and that's where the rubber hits the road. And I think you guys went a little extreme with Sedona, which I think that's probably by design, because it's the first time doing it, and it's an awesome place to go. But I think like even here in the Twin Cities, like you could drive 2 hours to Brainerd, right, and go to Grandview, Madden, so whatever, any of those places. You could do a golf trip, you could do a winter trip, whatever. I think getting away, like where you got to stay in a hotel or you got to go stay somewhere, it has such a huge impact on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. it allows you to find the clear space in your brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not bogged down by the energy of everything that's in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. And I think too, that if you're in obviously there's maybe some shenanigans that go on at night, with a couple cocktails or whatever. But I think too, if you're at home and let's say you do a 2-day and you're in the conference room at the office and then you go home to your family and stuff, it just still changes the clarity that can happen. And I don't want to say like, families are going to stop clarity. It's just that one night can make all the difference in the world.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to talk about before we flip over into 9 questions. There's things that you and I both share a passion for connecting people and for the right reasons, right? So that's why I truly believe you're such a great advocate for what we're doing at Coalition 9, and I truly believe in what you're doing with your group Wired. And so talk about your Wired group. And you just had an event the other day and I saw pictures on LinkedIn, which it looks super cool. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So this was our 4th event. I feel like as I was looking around last year, trying to just kind of reconnect with my network, there was all of these large networking groups that were either industry specific or they got so big, they just didn't feel genuine anymore. And I just wanted to create an environment where people could go have open, honest, transparent conversations with like-minded women. Mm-hmm. And so it started as just my network. I threw a happy hour in maybe September or October of last year. And all of a sudden it's like, there was like 30 women there. And then we had the next event. And interestingly, it was Jamie and we did a fireside chat about her book, You're Here, which if you're feeling stuck or you need help moving forward through something, highly recommend that book. Yep. And another like 30 women, and half of them were different than the first one. So I was like, okay, we're on to something here, right? So it's just organically grown in the fact that like, I was very specific about who I invited out the gate, which I think is a similar approach to what the approach that you're taking with Coalition 9 and why it's sticking, right? Because it's all like-minded, but different enough people that when you bring them together, there's just like this magical thing that happens.
Yeah.
And so now I'm trying to figure out, so the last event was Wednesday at the Lululemon studio at the Mall of America, which cool. Unbelievable space. They also have this Embrace North room next door that has like a sauna and a cold tub situation. I need to go back and check it out. But we had 30 women who literally pushed themselves through. It was a pretty badass workout. I had 3 of my girlfriends. We did cardio, dance, HIIT, and yoga. And I think it was more than most of them expected. Some of them were like, I haven't worked out in like 5 years. People push themselves through the whole workout, and the conversations after, it's just, I don't know, women are amazing. And I just feel really grateful that this is all happening, and I don't know where it's going to go. Like I had to set up a social media page and Instagram. Like I haven't even laid the foundation for this thing yet, but I'm like, we got to just keep going with it. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out a give back component because I haven't charged for any of the events yet. I've found sponsorship for all the events, and I would love to put together basically like a sponsorship program for women entrepreneurs who could submit to that. And then at the end of the year, we give a scholarship of some sort to a woman entrepreneur. So I have a lot of wheels spinning. It fills up my cup in a completely different way than my job, but it also like brings the two of them together in an interesting way. So it's all the worlds are colliding right now in such a good way. I just feel really, really grateful.
Yeah, it's very synergistic to, your beliefs. It's very synergistic to Coalition 9. It's very synergistic to Keystone. I want to make sure that we address what that acronym. So that is, Wired is an acronym. So what does Wired stand for?
Women impacting revenue who are empowered and driven.
Good. All right. I just want to, we breezed over Wired, but I wanted to make sure that you said that, because you did say that it is focused on women. And I wanted to be very specific. You do have a target that you're shooting for there. All right. The other thing I want to talk about is your husband's business. He's not on the podcast, but you're a owner in the business because you're married to him. So, and it's very different than what you do. And I still am very fascinated by it because I have two buddies that actually bought his product, not knowing.
Gosh.
Yeah. So I think, which is fantastic. So talk about his business too. And then we'll switch to 9 questions.
Yeah. So he, when I met him, he worked in the golf industry, which great connection point. And then he got into the hunting industry. So he worked for a competitor of their company now. So it's my brother and my husband, 50-50 owners. And then, like you said, me by default. About 4 years ago, this is our 4th year that we're entering. They were sitting at the deer shack on a Friday night, and Mike missed the community of hunters that he worked with. And so they basically like built Domain on a Friday night over some Coors Lights down at my brother's hunting shack. And it started out as like, we're just going to sell it to our buddies and friends and this and that. And my brother's other friend the company he owns does branding and graphic design. And so they put together this packaging label, and it was like, holy cow, like this thing is unbelievable. And so they went to market with it. They scaled growth the first year. I mean, the next year they built a website, got on Amazon. I think they're in over 600 stores right now. We hired a full-time operations manager in December. Mike, my husband, went full-time in June. It's been a labor of love. 2 Decembers ago, we finally got a warehouse. So we were doing it out of our basement and in our garage, and I'm still labeling like a couple hundred jugs a night. So it's been incredible, a lot of work. I mean, we threw my new jobs, the pandemic, a baby, all of these things into it. So it's been just like I don't even know what happened the last 3 years, but it's incredible. And my husband now works for himself, which was his dream. And it's brought him and my brother super close, which is awesome. And they're truly disrupting that space in the hunting industry. So for those of you listening, it's called Domain. It's food plots, attractants, and minerals that hunters basically use to improve their hunting property. So I won't divulge into more details because
I'll give you an example. So my buddy Travis, he owns 40 acres up in Becker, and he does quality deer management, which means he is very thoughtful about how he approaches that, and he's very big on harvesting deer and not just killing deer, right? And so he approaches it with the best quality products. He knows that eventually that this meat that he's going to take off of that land is meat that he's going to put in him and his family's body. So he's very thoughtful about it. That's why he bought your husband's product. And so there's your little commercial for your family business. We're doing all sorts of commercials today for Keystone and Domain and Wired. I love it. This is what it's all about, amplifying you. Good. All right. I needed to say that. Okay. We're going to switch to 9 questions. You ready? And can you confirm to me you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
I have no idea, and I'm like borderline scared, but let's go.
I love it. Well, I kind of alluded to one that I'm going to ask, but that's down the road a little bit. All right. Question number 1. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh gosh, cartoon as a kid. Rugrats? I don't know.
All right.
One that comes to mind.
Yeah. All right. Was that a Nickelodeon cartoon?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now my life is full of cartoons again. We can't get enough Coco Melon around here with my 2-year-old. So
yeah,
there's that.
All right. I don't even know what that is because I don't have kids, but that's cool. All right. Yeah, I have friends that sing like the Baby Shark song all the time, and they're 50-year-old adults. Yeah. What kind of toothbrush do you use?
Sonicare.
Yeah, so electric toothbrush, huh?
Electric toothbrush gets the job done.
Is it loud?
No, it's really quiet.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like there's a couple brands, because I did my research. There's a couple brands that are real loud, but Sonicare is real quiet.
Yeah, my wife just made me get rid of my Sonicare because it was too loud. So maybe it just wore out. I had it for about 4 years. So those that don't know about electric toothbrushes, yes, you do replace the head. So I didn't use the same head for 4 years. That's disgusting. But yeah, so I went and got a Quip. I'm going to try that thing out.
Oh, is that the one that looks like just a normal toothbrush?
Yeah, it's pretty sweet, actually. I like it.
Keep me posted.
I will. We'll have some toothbrush talk in the future. Describe your college experience in 1 word.
Well, it's 3: beer and pizza.
All right, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Was there a specific pizza joint in St. Cloud that was your go-to?
No, like every Thursday, all the places had beer and pizza. So I feel like we just kind of made our rounds and that was what we did.
What was your beer of choice?
Coors Light.
Yeah, that's your second Coors Light reference in this podcast.
Interestingly, I don't even drink beer now. Like I feel like I had so much beer back then that the thought of it just grosses me out now.
Yeah, especially I just can't do light beer like that anymore. Okay, so you're either a professional wrestler or you're a professional athlete of some sport, and you have to pick a walk-in song. What is your walk-in song?
I'm really into Rachel Platt and Fight Song right now.
All right, love it. Good. What is your favorite piece of clothing?
I feel like this is like a status quo female answer, but yoga pants.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Heck yeah. And they're comfy, so it's all good. What is one quality in a person that impresses you?
Authenticity.
Yeah.
Sweet. I feel like it's hard to actually truly live up to being authentic, but if you do what you say, like it's not that hard.
Yeah, you are who you are. Agreed. That's one of my personal core values. So you and I have that in common. iPhone or Google phone, and why? Do you use an iPhone or do you use a Google phone?
I use an iPhone just because I'm a Mac gal. Like I've always used a Mac and everything just works well together. And I'm not an overly tech savvy person. I'm very basic when it comes to tech. So I need something simple.
All right. That's the first time I've ever asked that question. So thanks for taking a stab at it. And it's a good reason why. That's why I use an iPhone, because everything is Mac. What is the last book that you read?
Reread The Go-Giver through Coalition 9.
Yeah, sweet. Okay. Nice. That wasn't that long ago. That was only about 2 months ago. So that's good. Are you a big reader?
Yeah. I go in spurts. I listen to a lot of podcasts because I spend a lot of time in the car living in Wisconsin and having an office that's on the west side of the city. So yeah, audiobooks definitely versus like actual books.
Yeah, me too. All right. Last question. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
I think it was just when I was going through all the thoughts in my head about changing career, like changing my job again, stop worrying about what's on the paper and do what your gut's telling you and what your heart's telling you and follow what fills up your cup.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that you would bring that one back. That was a good one from our conversation. Yeah. Jen, where can people find you on the old interwebs?
LinkedIn. Yeah. It's just Jen Lindahl. If you want to email me directly, it's jen@KeystoneGroupIntl.com. But I'm super active on LinkedIn. So
all right. And then I'm gonna hot link in our show notes here. So anybody who's listening to this on whether it be Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever. So I'll hot link your LinkedIn profile. I'll hot link your email address. I think I'm also going to hot link your husband's business to Domain, because we got to make sure that we're giving some love to him and spreading it out. Jen, I got to tell you, like we met like a couple of years ago when I was starting this whole thing, and I was relentless about wanting you to be part of this community because I just think you're an awesome human being and you do it for all the right reasons. So I can't thank you enough for being on the show and doing everything that you do to, like the Wired events and stuff like that. You're just a great advocate for building a better community.
The feeling is mutual. And everyone I talk to, I feel like I talk about Coalition 9. I literally have had 4 now, and just the impact that it's had in that small amount of time, and just how thoughtful and methodical you are in putting together and assembling these groups. I mean, it's pretty spectacular.
And it's super fun. So it fills my cup too. So thanks a lot, Jen. On behalf of Jen Lindahl, this has been the Power of 9 podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time. Cheers.